In this video, I'm going to be talking about originality. Now, many great thinkers have questioned what originality is, and while I will talk a bit about this, my main question is, does originality still exist, or did it ever exist? To first answer these questions, we must look at what originality is and apply it to both past and present works. In the modern day, with the rise of copyrights and patents and all that fun legal stuff, we have created a more constricting definition of originality, that to be, quote, original means to have no prior influences, and that the work comes 100% and completely from you and your mind. But in actuality, this is simply impossible. We are constantly being influenced, both consciously and subconsciously, by the people and art surrounding us. But does this mean originality is dead? No. Quite simply, it means our definition of originality must change. Or if we look at history, it must be retrieved. So the word originality was first used in 1742, and prior to this, artists prided themselves on having a connection to past works and embraced similarities from one generation to the next. This was largely visible in the Renaissance, which literally means rebirth in French. People embraced past works, and an artist was seen as only as good as their adaptation of past ideas and their manner of creation, their craftsmanship. Shakespeare is one example of how we can view originality. So Shakespeare was innovative, creating the rom-com amongst many other things, but that is not to say all of Shakespeare's ideas were completely his. Shakespeare embraced collaboration and took multiple traditions and put them together to make something new. Now, by our strict modern-day definition, that an original work is a work that has not been received from others nor copied based on the work of others, Shakespeare would be by no means original, because he took past ideas and used them and collaborated. Yet, if we look at Shakespeare's time, he wouldn't really have cared whether or not he was original, because it wasn't valued in his time. There is no such thing as a copyright. That didn't happen until the Industrial Revolution. In fact, the Industrial Revolution was when the concept of originality really took off, as innovation was happening in every field around the clock and people wanted to protect their designs and ideas. Back then, it was thought that only people who had something called genius could be original. But T.S. Eliot offers up one explanation for what originality could be, and it can very easily be applied to Shakespeare. So he explains that you can't create anything that's interesting or new for anyone unless you're steeped in tradition. And you won't reproduce something if you're steeped in tradition because you're living at a different time in a different context. So then you will, by that means, create something which modifies tradition. And like I said, this is easily applied to Shakespeare because he looked at tradition, he examined it, and then he created something new with it. So this idea of taking something from the past and modifying it to make it yours has happened all throughout history, and it's consistently happening today. Rembrandt's self-portrait was first seen as very radical and new, but really, Rembrandt copied the pose of a portrait of a man in blue by Titian. Similarly, Picasso self-proclaimed himself a thief, stealing from Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe and Las Meninas by Velázquez. Giorgio Vasari, a Renaissance artist, appropriated Michelangelo's Libyan Sibyl in his art. And even Dante once said, "The more closely we imitate great poets, the better we write." And we see the same things happening in music. Most recently with Sam Smith's iconic Stay With Me and its similarities to Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down. In modern-day music and art, we see more people getting sued for copyright infringement and plagiarism. But it's not that there is less originality, but rather just that there is more of a stigma against collaboration and the use of other people's works. People now own ideas and must be paid if an artist wants to use them. This is something that was never around in the times of Shakespeare or Rembrandt. We are by far a more connected species than we were just 50 years ago. So as a result, there is more reproduction and copying today. But as I said, that doesn't necessarily mean there is no longer innovation. And I am by no means endorsing stealing directly from an artist and not giving them credit, but collaboration should be something that is encouraged, not shot down. So how can we define originality as it exists today? because it most definitely does exist. For some people, it may just exist in the form of appropriation or building on past works, but innovation and invention do exist. Like, there are sounds in music such as like electronic dance music or EDM that could not have been created 30 years ago. We physically did not have the technology to create it. We didn't have the sounds could not be made. So one way to look at originality is to compare art with its contemporaries and look at how it has built on past works. By doing this, we preserve the identity of the artist as an individual who makes a contribution to cultural dialogue without having some sort of genius. Really, the only way to make progress in music or whatever type of art it may be is to take what's there and rip it apart. This is kind of what Shakespeare did with taking tradition and creating something new with it, because everything is built on something else. But the most important thing is building on top of what you have already heard. For something to be original, really what it comes down to is how the artist takes their influences and makes something different with them, how they build on those influences. Many modern musicians use past artists and sounds in their own music because they admire the artist and they take things they love and build on them. An example of this is the song La-Di-Da-Di by Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, which is playing right now. This song has been built on by artists such as Miley Cyrus, Snoop Dogg, and the Beastie Boys, and it is the most sampled song in history. And then Miley Cyrus' song, We Can't Stop, which is now playing, uses La-Di-Da-Di in its lyrics, but it has a completely different feel from the original song. It has more of a pop vibe, and it's a little quicker. And so this occurs often because people realize that without music from the past, we wouldn't have the music we have today, and the same goes for visual arts. The meaning of the term original speaks to the relationship between the artist and the work. Because while a piece may originate with an artist, it was not created in complete ignorance. That would be impossible. And for something to be original, people must make a self-conscious choice to be original and different. Miley Cyrus could have paid millions of dollars to just use one line of Dougie Fresh's song in her song, and she did. But she didn't just use the line. She messed with it, she played with it, and she made it different. And so she made a conscious choice to alter it and do something different. And art is the general process of building from one generation to the next. This is very visible in music and all other forms of art. Therefore, originality is not dead. It has always existed, just not in the way we define it today. Instead, it is and was the kind of originality that is appropriation and creativity mixed together, which leads to the creation of something great.